I think right now you have a very reactive marketplace that's saying, data privacy is ruling the roost, when in actual fact, 70% of consumers would be more than happy to share more data with you, including more journey data along the way, that we're capturing, in exchange for higher relevancy, more value, and more deliberate value attribution.
You are listening to Power Marketing with Kevin Lee. Kevin and his agency Did It have helped thousands of businesses win through superior marketing, as have his books, articles, speaking engagements, and the E-Marketing Association Power Marketing podcasts. Here's Kevin.
I'm pleased to be joined today by Laurel Rossi, who's the Chief Marketing Officer at Infillion. And not everybody knows what Infillion is because it's sort of a mix of brands that were merged together over the years. So why don't you give us the elevator pitch and then the history?
Thank you so much, Kevin. Yeah, Infillion is a combination of two companies, Truex and Gimbal. Infillion's a new kind of media company. We have built it for the future in terms of consumer-defining media. We optimize time, attention, and privacy. The Gimbal business was a commerce business. It's a location technology, a SaaS business that uniquely powers lower funnel activities for brands and agencies. And so when we put the two companies together, we decided that we would be able to take a full funnel approach to a consumer's journey, ask them what they're looking for. Most of our, if not all of our media and location businesses opt in. And since 70% of consumers avoid advertising, we decided to focus on true attention as a core metric of our business, mostly for upper funnel, but we also serve all areas of the funnel in our media business.
Great. Well, I noticed you've got CTV listed as a key area of focus on your website. And that's really powerful because you still do have personalization ability and targeting ability with CTV that you're sort of losing in the broader web. So given its powerful combination of household targeting and video-based storytelling, which industries do you feel are taking the biggest advantage of that within CTV?
Yeah, there's so much talk about streaming and a consumer-first ad experience and so much consumer choice right in our sweet spot. The sectors that seem to be taking the most advantage, at least from our perspective, are financial services, pharma, CPG is sort of making its way through, particularly as addressability gets better and better. And we know that the evolution of streaming is only going to get better and better over time, not only in terms of addressability, but in terms of consumer choice.
Yeah, the one area that's undergoing a lot of sort of upheaval, obviously, in the last 2 or 3 years has been mobile, right? We're losing a lot of precision in our targeting, and we're losing some accuracy in our tracking. So given the huge opportunity of mobile ads, how are they adapting their strategies to deal with sort of the new reality there?
Yeah, two responses to that. One is because we're in the location business and we capture both location and behavioral data, even viewership data, we have a great opportunity for those who have opted in to make sure that the mobile experience is better than ever. We do take an omnichannel approach, but more important, I think we need to be thinking about how we monetize in-app experiences for customers. And it's something that I talked a lot about at Advertising Week with my co-partner at Airship. If 10% of people are actually in-app after they've downloaded, what is happening to the other 90% of folks? And so it's a little bit less right now for me about what the mobile experience is with regard to acquisition and really more about the shareholder value we've promised, both in e-commerce and in other mobile experiences in terms of, data sharing, commerce, et cetera.
Yeah, geography tells you a huge amount about a person, and this is not just true when they're out there shopping and engaging in the world at large, but even where they live or where they work tells you a lot about an individual. Do you think marketers are taking full advantage of what geography tells you about a person, even if they're anonymized?
Yeah, no, I love that question because it's really more about, as you know, the the behavior that comes off that location data. And so it's really less about the specific or the precision of that location. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's really fantastic because the consumer really wants that. They want us, if I give you my information, I expect that geolocation is going to work for me if I've opted into that. And so it should be precise. But more important, it's about the behaviors. So if I visit, 2, 3, 4 locations in a row and that pattern persists, what can happen in terms of that precision turning into a customer advantage? Is there a value? Is there some relevancy? Is there a future ad that gets delivered to me that's about convenience, seamless shopping, et cetera, that I'm expecting? And we really are focused on those behaviors and those analytics.
That's great. Obviously, being able to target effectively and sort of knowing who the customers are that you're going after and understanding their behaviors is super important. If you can find that sort of perfect storm of the right message at the right time to the right consumer or in the right audience, how do you then sort of really feel confident that the campaign is working, even if you don't have, for example, last touch attribution?
Yeah, a couple of things. I think to your last question, I think that marketers are just scratching the surface in terms of taking advantage of what location has to offer, and more important, really understanding and tracking the attention attached to that. And so when I think about last touch attribution, when I think about the journey itself along the way, I think it's the combination of those factors that are really important to and store for brands to store and understand going forward. I think we are just getting to the beginning of that kind of measurement and attribution information, and being able to share it with all of the privacy concerns, considered and put in place. I think right now you have a very reactive marketplace that's saying, data privacy is ruling the roost, when in actual fact, 70% of consumers would be more than happy to share more data with you, including more journey data along the way, that we're capturing, in exchange for higher relevancy, more value, and more deliberate value attribution.
Yeah, I've as an aside, you occasionally see the surveys that they take of consumers to understand their preferences with regards to that. And often the questions that are asked of the consumers are extremely leading, right? Where they basically lead the person to feel like it's a horrible thing when they ask them the question. And so then if you reframe the question, you get a completely different answer, especially if you frame the question with an understanding about relevancy or deals or, some kind of a more of a quid pro quo, because nobody wants to see irrelevant advertising if they're forced to see advertising. So I do think there's a little bit of a preconceived objective when some of these surveys go out, in that they're looking for a particular set of answers, and they frame their questions in a non-scientific way, let's say.
I love that you're bringing that up, because I feel like we have focused at most of what we talk to consumers about around, sort of avoiding the trapdoors, right? Avoiding the privacy concerns, rather than thinking about what would be more useful, what's the upside, et cetera. And again, I think for us, because we're in an opt-in environment for most of our work, if not all, I think we always have the confidence that we can ask those questions in either a positive or certainly a neutral way.
Right.
We did a study earlier this year with Ipsos, and we found, and the reason we talk so much about the consumer-defined future is we know that relevancy doesn't just pertain to topics or value or deals or what have you, but it also implies ad format changes. It also implies that I'm willing to listen to advertising or look at advertising that's longer, not necessarily always just 6 seconds, as an example, not in the other direction. So I think if we listen carefully, it's your point about asking questions in the right way, we learn a lot more as well.
Absolutely. Your personal background has a lot of revolving around creative and creativity. Do you feel like marketers are putting enough thought and energy into creative? Because if the creative's bad, doesn't matter how good your targeting is, the campaign's going to tank.
I think, Kevin, that one of the things that gives us permission to do this kind of addressable marketing, to do this kind of very personalized marketing with folks is we promise the kind of relevancy that's attached to creativity. And we know that consumers say two things every single time. One is make it super entertaining. And number two, obviously make the message relevant to me in terms of the categories I'm interested in. Those are 1 and 2 all the time. Entertainment's a big factor. We've sort of forgotten some of that. In our work, the thing that we are focused on most often is how do you take great creative and techify it? That's my word for it. We are in a position to be able to look at a value exchange ad and say, we're looking for responsiveness here. We're looking for proof of attention. But boy, doesn't that smack of the old days of direct response advertising, which all of a sudden has become, synonymous with a lack of creativity. That is completely untrue. I think we just need to teach this generation or the last generation who's still in the marketplace how to techify work so that it is both entertaining and maintains the integrity of the creative process that was started, by brands and their agencies.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned that two of the industries that are taking, significant advantage of your platform are financial services and pharma. And you don't typically think of those categories as being particularly entertaining advertising, except maybe for insurance, because you've got geckos and you've got turkeys or whatever it is that it's an emu, actually. I should remember that. Emus, you've got geckos, you've got flow, right? In insurance, there's a little bit of fun there, right? But in a lot of other financial services, they have a bit of an uphill battle with creative, or at least it's perceived that they do, right? And pharma, again, it's not a category that's known for entertaining advertising. So do you have any, without naming names, are there any examples that you think where folks have sort of overcome that headwind and actually become really creative and targeted with regards to their messaging and advertising?
Yeah, I think both. I'll just address those categories first. I think fintech has given financial services a run for its money in terms of creativity also. So everybody's sort of stepped up their game, right? The gloves were off in terms of fintech entering the market. I think the insurance companies were there to begin with. Obviously, Geico started that. And, in these categories that are so bereft with competition and they're so full, clearly they've figured out that entertainment's the way. The thing I like about Geico's strategy as well is the hyper, targeting on a geo basis. And so that really says to me they were paying attention long before everybody else, and everybody else has followed. We've had some really, really great banks, what you would think of as traditional banking, come into the marketplace and do things that are really unusual. I think they're competing with fintech, and they're also trying to be, very smart about how they play in that space as well. On the pharma side, I think a lot has been done with casting. And I think what you're going to see over the next, I think that's where the innovation has come in terms of making the spots more interesting, being way more direct. If you look at all the HIV advertising right now, people are very direct about what that advertising is about, and that it's sea change in that category. The last thing I'll say is I mentioned earlier that ad formats are changing. When you think about the digital world and you think about ISI as an example, right? All that disclosure information in pharma. What do you do in the digital world? What do you do in CTV? We've just developed an ISI version of our CTV advertising, which I think will be profoundly game-changing, because somebody who's interested, seniors read their advertising, as an example. They read direct mail, et cetera. You can pause that ad and actually really read the information and not just treat it as disclosure.
Oh, well, yeah, that's definitely an ad format improvement. It used to be that every pharma ad you'd see or hear, you'd have the fast talker or the speedy copy that flies by, right? And so giving the advertiser the power to actually figure out what is that person saying, or what is that extra information that I probably need? I think that is potentially a game changer to increase engagement of the ads. So I look forward to seeing how that rolls out across industries, because it's not just pharma that needs it. Lots of categories need it. So sort of broadly speaking, are there any mistakes you think marketers are making this year that they should fix next year in 2023?
A couple of things. I think the move to CTV has been slower than I expected. I think that obviously the industry's booming. The amount of content coming into the marketplace is tremendous from a streaming perspective. But I think the awkwardness in terms of moving from linear to CTV has gone a lot slower than I thought it would in terms of execution. So I think that's probably one of the places. And the other is, as I mentioned earlier, how do you take something that is digital by nature, maintain the integrity of that fantastic creative that everybody's developing, and make sure that it continues to land with consumers in a very creative way. And I think that there have been some flat-footed approaches to, digital creative. And the last thing I'll say is I think the omnichannel approach is obviously the way to the future. It's obviously how the consumer behaves. Obviously, COVID changed a lot of that. I'm not 100% sure the way that agencies are set up really focuses on that. And so when I think about the fact that a lot of folks are still very segmented in terms of how they approach the buying process, I think for me, when that changes, I think the consumer-defined future will be here.
Yeah, I mean, you make a great point in that, given the fact that you're in some cases personalizing creative by persona or by segment, and sometimes even further than that, the idea that you could have the entire buying team be in a different building, a different company than the creative team would lead to a missed opportunity there. Do you feel like those really need to be tied more together? And is the client side sort of individual the glue that pulls them together, or does it really need to be an omnichannel agency?
I think clients today pull it together by definition, because they are, the Swiss Army knife from that perspective for sure. I think within agencies, even within a single media agency, you've got, very segmented or fragmented buying across, mediums. And I think that's starting to, come apart as, digital becomes obviously the focus.
Right.
And so I think when that happens, that full funnel approach will be. And the other thing is you've got performance agencies in an entirely different arena, than the acquisition partners. And therefore, I'd love to see those things joined. And, our Infillion approach to the marketplace has always been to look at not just full funnel acquisition, but consumer journey, right? All the way through to loyalty and amplification and advocacy. And so, but I think you can say that when you're looking at a journey that also includes a lot of in-app behavior and also attribution from that perspective.
Yeah, a lot of what you're doing is app-centric, and it would occur to me that for the most part, a lot of the issues about bots go away. Not that there isn't fraud that happens within the app ecosystem, but it would seem like one could put systems in place to be much more confident that these are legit humans engaging in legit experiences, and that your marketing budget is, far more likely to be efficient if you're sort of taking all those big question marks out of the equation. Do you have clients asking you about that and feeling sort of much more confident when they realize sort of the direct relationships that you have through the channels that you're using?
I think that most of our clients come to us because of that direct relationship. I feel like that's, been one of the hallmarks of our business. And so therefore, we probably have a very different view of the world to some degree, but everybody's going there. We're going to get there. I think that from a fraud perspective, I think the marketplace is also self-regulating itself into a place where we can stop hopefully worrying about that over the long run. I think we're going to get there. And it's always been an industry ultimately that regulates itself in terms of, how to get to what's best for the customer, I think. I'm an optimist.
Well, it's good. It's a good time to be an optimist, because final question is really about next year, because economically, nobody knows how, whether we'll end up in a recession. Will it be US centric? Will it be global? And if that happens, are there any strategy changes you would recommend to fellow CMOs? I mean, you wear the CMO hat, obviously, for a media organization, right? So, if they make the wrong decisions, meaning your clients make the wrong decisions with regards to allocating budgets into marketing, then it trickles down. But we've seen in the past some major companies were built during recessions. So what's your recommendation to your clients and to other CMOs if 2023 ends up being a recession year?
I think for us, the smart thing is, really to keep our heads about us in terms of what's happened over the past 2 quarters, right? And so we've seen a lot of value come out of the market, and we've seen a lot of, obviously media investment come out of the market. Where I think it's going, and the way we traditionally advise clients, is to really take a scenario approach, to really look at on a quarter by quarter basis what they need to do in terms of meeting the demands, both of their bottom line and also obviously to drive demand. And so I think traditional agency, let's call it hype or recommendations has always been, you've got to spend your way out of a recession. You've got to spend your way to making sure that you're creating demand. I think we take a more modest approach because we're so performance oriented, and so measurement oriented. And we just suggest to our clients that we take a scenario approach. Obviously, we'd never recommend coming out of the market because that's self-defeating, but that we would take a quarter by quarter approach and do some scenario planning around what's going to get them the best performance. And I think for us, one of our big products, TrueX, is a guaranteed engagement product. So obviously the investment there is a lot easier than in some other cases where, in exchange for the value and also the consumer's completion of an ad, that's how a customer pays. And so it becomes a little bit easier in that scenario, to hedge your bets.
Absolutely. Any other thoughts for things that have you excited for the next year, either from your own marketing or with the ecosystem at large?
Yeah, thanks for asking. We have 2 new things coming up. We've got a slate of new products coming down the pike where we will, be finally taking our own advice to some degree and taking a full funnel approach with our media clients, suggesting more expansive media planning, not just our engagement product, but also, a very fresh look at programmatic, and the kind of targeting that we are recommending and guaranteeing is really around personas and segments that are very unique, mostly because of our location data. So that's exciting. And I would say the advice or the vision for next year should really be toward that personalized marketing, addressability, and all the things that the marketplace has been promising for years. Let's see what happens with IDs going forward. ID graphs are getting much more sophisticated, and not in a creepy way, in a very informational, informative way, in order to make consumers excited about that relevancy we talked about earlier.
Yeah, I also noticed before we jumped on the podcast that you guys have a corporate social responsibility initiative. So thank you for that as somebody who runs a nonprofit, and thank you for all the nonprofits that you've helped with that. And any thoughts on that and how that evolved as an internal initiative?
Yeah, thank you for asking about it. It's something that's near and dear to my heart. True Giving is a very customer forward initiative. We reach out to nonprofits who are interested in using our demand platform to be able to get interest, develop relationships with their constituents, raise money, et cetera. And so we use our omnichannel platform, CTV included. We take their assets and we develop and donate the media that's necessary to run a campaign. And so we've done things for Teach Rock and Scleroderma Society and a whole bunch of others. And it's not an inexpensive program to run. We're super proud of it. And the genesis of it was a very philanthropic board member, Susie Franklin, that unfortunately passed away, I think last year, right before I joined. And we are very devoted to carrying on her legacy from that perspective. But True Giving's become a very big part of our culture, along with our Culture Council, which also focuses on things like days of giving, et cetera, where employees, we all know our employees, decide what our future is in terms of what kind of talent we're going to have, really want purpose to be a big part of their future as well.
Well, great. I appreciate you joining me and sharing your wisdom for everyone who's thinking about not just marketing now, but marketing in the future. So we will absolutely stay in touch, and I look forward to watching your platform evolve.
Thank you so much, Kevin. This was such an honor. Appreciate it.
Kevin Lee's Power Marketing is available on all your favorite podcast networks. Kevin loves helping businesses excel at marketing. Having marketing challenges? Just like Santa in The Miracle on 34th Street, if Kevin can't help you, he'll know someone who can. Find him on LinkedIn, subscribe, or follow.